Hello everyone, this is Jotto and welcome to a deck tech on lightning zombies. Yes, that's what I'm going with. Now, this is a zombie deck splashing blue for advanced Thurs. Yes, it sounds ridiculous splashing a double blue requirement hero, but as it turns out, this is actually the most success I've ever had with the zombie deck. So this deck came out of a rather bizarre end of a stream where I was very bored and I had about half an hour left in the stream, so I thought, let's make something bizarre. So I thought, corruption doesn't see any play, let's make a zombie deck. And I did, and it works. Kind of. It's like a tier 2 deck. It's like, I don't know, it can beat tier 1 decks occasionally. It beats Zash, not never though. And it's a bit hit and miss against a lot of other decks. As I said, it's a tier 2 deck. It's not anywhere near tier 1, but hopefully corruption will get buffed a little bit. I think this is about as good as you can get it in the current state of the game, at least. So anyway, let's go over the LZ, or Lightning Zombies, also known as Landing Zone. But anyway, so, first things first, this is a deck that starts corruption and curves upwards from corruption. It has 3 requirements, because you need the double blue with Thurs, but you don't want to go up to 4 levels, although you can because it consumes spirit every so often. But first things first, let's go over some of the early drops. Zombie Legionnaire, arguably the best 1-drop in the game. It is one of the reasons to play corruption. It is basically a lizard that can attack sometimes, and also gets tribal benefits from Necromancer, so it's very difficult to block. Now onto Infernal Vulture. Infernal Vulture is both an additional late game hitter and a 2-drop to curve into Insatiable Ghoul that can be useful later in the game. As a result, because we're running Insatiable Ghoul, I actually always put my opponent's stuff back in their deck as opposed to my stuff if I can. But playing Infernal Vulture on turn 1 is one of the stronger openings you can do going second, because if it doesn't die, you can actually mill yourself. And the reason you always mill yourself is because if it's 2 creatures, you just attack for 3 on turn 2. But if it's 3 creatures, you have 1 for Insatiable Ghoul later. So Vulture is actually quite helpful, although it's a little clunky, so it's only a 2-off. 4 Infected Survivor. Necessary for 2 reasons. 1, it's very good with Consumed Spirit and Noxious Fumes. Very good. It even takes down Library Guards. And also good against elves. And 2, it produces zombies along with an extra one with Flesh Sculptor, or just giving the zombie created deadly from the Necromancer. So the Infected Survivor is not the best 2-drop ever, but it does help. It's not very aggressive, but it's much better than Running Remains. Especially with 25 life. Running Remains is really bad with 25 life. And Vulture is often just a better one, because it will attack for 3, and you're not playing Nefaros, so you can't really attack into much with Running Remains anyway. On to Insatiable Ghoul to close out the sort of opener that you prefer to do, although there are a couple other 3-drops that we'll talk about a little bit later. So Insatiable Ghoul is the preferred turn 3 drop. It's also the preferred drop on turn 2 and 3 if you're going second. Legionnaire Ghoul is probably the best opening you can get. 3 mana 3/4 is absolutely brutal, and it just doesn't really die to anything. On top of that, the drawback is quite severe, but if you get multiple of them out, it's actually not too bad. It looks bad because you start going through your deck quite quickly, but in reality, they don't all trigger at once. So what happens is that if you have no creatures in your graveyard, the first one will mill, and then you can use the milled cards to feed the second one, which means the second one can attack. So yeah, the self-milling aspect is necessary with Vulture, and that's why I actually mill myself with Vulture, although Vulture's too clunky to run multiple, but I have done Vulture into Ghoul in certain matchups. But Ghoul is... the thing about Ghoul is he's a 3-drop that is a successful threat later in the game. He doesn't die to Fireball, he doesn't die to Assassinate, he doesn't die to any any corruption removal. He's fairly resilient against every aspect, to be honest. The only thing that can really target him is Ray of Righteousness, and then that's an extra aspect and the same amount of mana, and then you just play a bigger threat, because Ghoul isn't the biggest threat in the deck, he's the second largest threat in the deck, in fact. Now, if we go on to the 2 other 3-drops, we've got the 4 Mesmerizing Spirits, because they are amazing and they are necessary. Yeah, 4 Mesmerizing Spirit is pretty much standard in every corruption deck, because it's one of the best cards they have. Being able to get a guaranteed 2-for-1 is very useful. Also, having a flying attacker and blocker is surprisingly handy because it means you can play it and they can't attack it before it can swing in, making it a lot harder to block. So the flying should not be underestimated. It's arguably more powerful than the discard effect sometimes. So yeah, 2-1 for 3 mana. Well, 2-1 for 3 requirement wise on turn 3 with flying and ability is absolutely amazing. Flesh Sculptor. Now, Flesh Sculptor spends a lot of his time on the, or her time, I guess, on the back row. It mostly makes zombies out of pretty much everything, and then those zombies have deadly. Meaning that a Flesh Sculptor Necromancer on the back row means that even a Phoenix can't, like, block effectively, because you block with the Phoenix, and then you lose the Phoenix, and then another zombie comes out of the zombie you killed, and then you lose the other side of the Phoenix to that. So, along with the Darius hero power, it's actually surprisingly difficult to block a zombie board with Necromancer and Flesh Sculptor out. Alright, now we'll talk about the early removal, and then we'll go on to the later game threats, which are basically turn 4 threats. Noxious Tombs. Noxious Tombs is mandatory. This deck originally had 3 in it, but now it has 4, because you really need 4. It kills elves, it kills lizards, it kills anything aggressive, it kills assassins. That's really important. Protectors. Just anything that is irritating. -2/-2 is really good. It also kills library guards if you have a infected survivor out. So that's one of the reasons why 4 infected survivor is so good. Because the library guards, yes, it's a 2-for-1, but you just tempoed them out. Because while they're going 3 mana 2 resources, you're going 4 mana 1 resource and going fumes, kill it, ghoul. And then you probably already had another ghoul out or a vulture or something, so you're just attacking for large amounts of damage. So fumes is an amazing tempo card. Consume Spirit. Now, Consume Spirit is basically bad fumes in this deck. Alright, so the thing about Consume is that there's only 2 in this deck. Normal zombie decks run 3 or possibly 4. The reason I'm only running 2 is because I only want to go to 1 corruption level. Having Consume in the deck means that going up to 2 corruption levels can actually win you the game sometimes. But these aren't going to be these hyper-powered Consume Spirits that you see in some zombie decks where they go up to -3 +3, or I've even seen -5 +5. These hyper-powerful Consume Spirits don't really happen in this kind of deck. Whereas in a lot of New Horizons decks, so I've had some ridiculous Consume Spirits in New Horizons decks. And those decks, the standard zombie decks also run Word of Pain for damage later on in the game, whereas I'm running Advanced Darius because he's also a board clear. But we'll get to him when we talk about the blue splash. So, Consume is basically just bad fumes. It's -1/-1, +1/+1, +1. However, the extra mana makes it worse than fumes. It also means you can kill 1/1 and then buff your guy and get some extra damage in. So it's fairly handy in that regard. It's also only until end of turn, which means you can actually siphon off your own guys to increase damage, which I have done a couple times. It gives you a little bit of reach. And that's all you need, it's just a little bit of reach. It's actually surprisingly good, even though normally it's only a -1/-1, +1/+1, +1. Alright, on to the 4 drops. Now, 4 is as high on the curve as this deck goes if you don't include the hero power. The hero power is usually a finisher. I think the most amount of times I've ever activated the hero power was twice, because the deck is very low to the ground. Now, I'll talk about library guards and such at the end. So, Necromancer. Necromancer gives zombies deadly, and is also a good defensive creature. Now, when we talk about giving zombies deadly, almost every card in this deck is a zombie or produces a zombie. So we've got Legionnaire, Ghoul, Flesh Sculptor makes a zombie out of anything, Infected Survivor. So there's lots of zombies in this deck. Zombie Giant, we have tons of zombies. And in addition to that, the Necromancer himself is deadly, making him very irritating to attack into, and it's impossible to attack into him without losing something, meaning that he is the bane of Haldiri Rider's existence. So yeah, Necromancer is an astonishingly good card. He was playable before the buff, but 2 months ago he got his speed increased by 1 from 1 to 2, and that was such a massive massive buff. And as a result, he's the... I had 11 4-drops in this deck, and Necromancer is warranted as as the other 4 of because he's so important. And getting multiple out is actually good because it means they can't kill one and then attack the rest of your board. Zombie Giant, the big threat of the deck. Zombie Giant has been astonishingly good. He's actually completely unkillable for some red decks. I've had boards against red where they just can't win because I just have Ghoul and Giant out and they're just attacking for 7 per turn and they can't kill them. They have to Dragonfire the Zombie Giant. That's insane. That's such a big tempo loss. You're paying 2 extra aspects to kill this thing and it comes down to turn 4. So it's more or less invulnerable. Now the reason it's only a 3-of is because it's so bad on defense. If you don't have fast early game, Zombie Giant's a really bad card because it doesn't really do anything. It's not like Dread Knight where it can stop them from attacking, or Ziaro, which reduces their damage. It's just bad on defense. And it's one of the reasons why I prefer Thunderstorm Titan over Zombie Giants in general. But you don't get access to Thunderstorm Titan in this kind of deck, and if you did, I'd be playing it, but you don't have it. The Deadly from Necromancer doesn't really come up, although sometimes it does when they block it with like 3 guys. So, yeah, that does occasionally come up. But the Zombie Giant in general is just your big finisher. Remember I said earlier with Ghoul, they have to use hard removal on the Ghoul basically, and then the Giant comes down. And it's actually not vulnerable to a lot of hard removal. It's not vulnerable to Helm, because all of the other threats are basically 2 speed. I mean, Legionnaire is pretty much the only other 1-speed threat, and Vulture just goes straight over it. So even if it gets helmed, it's not that bad. Them helming a Vulture is a disaster. So against Dominion, just don't keep Vultures. It's such a bad idea. But with Zombie Giant, it's not that much of a threat. So really, really cool card. Library Guards. So we're on to the blue splash. Now, this deck runs 7 blue shrines. Normally it runs 6 for a splash like this, but you need double blue consistently on turn 6. So, the idea is generally go 4-drop, 4-drop hero power. So, yeah. Anyway, the Library Guards is the other 4 of 4-drop because it is just that good. Being able to draw a card on a 2-3 with 3 speed is amazing. It's one of the best cards in its aspect, if not the best blue card. And it's just such a good defensive creature when you need it. It also attacks past a lot of things. It's good, it's relatively good on offense, it's very good on defense, and it gives you card advantage, keeping your hand relatively full. Now, this deck has a strange paradox associated with it, which is zombie decks in general empty their hand very quickly. But this deck doesn't, and the reason for it is because you're only playing 1 threat a turn. So if we look at the way this works on curve, you've got Legionnaire, Survivor, Ghoul, Zombie Giant. We're not looking to go multiple 2-drops in 1 turn or something. We're looking to go for on-curve threats, which means that for basically the first 5 or 6 turns, you're just playing on curve, and then you hero power every 3 turns. So you actually stay up on card advantage for a decent amount of time. I haven't had a situation where I've just run out of cards. Now, speaking about the hero power, this is the most important thing in the deck. It's the reason why I called the deck after it, Lightning Zombies, and it's also the reason why this deck actually wins a lot of games. Darius Stormborn, the most underestimated hero in the entire game. So his 4-mana ability shocks everything. It also clears half the board, and it lets you get past everything in the game. Which is an insane ability, because the way Shock works is that if you shock his board, you can attack, then he can't attack, and then you can attack again before he can block. So you get 2 attacks in, and he can't attack you back. It's one of the best tempo abilities in the entire game when it comes to combat, and it kills all the small stuff. It is an astonishing ability, and it's one of the only reasons this deck can ever beat Advanced Neva. Now, Advanced Neva is still a close to impossible matchup if you don't rush him down, but the point is that the hero power will end the game against a lot of matchups. Against soldiers, it's laughable, because you just clear all the militia and everything, and it's just hilarious. So, yeah, Darius is just amazing. Against soldiers, even if they have a couple tacticians out, you can actually just hero power, kill the tacticians, and his whole board dies because of all those buffs, since most soldier cards have 1 health base, like Dwarf Musketeer, Militia, things like that. There is Elite Vanguard, has 3, but that's not so much of an issue. Or you can just attack through it. So yeah, Dara Stormborn is absolutely amazing. Now, shrine count-wise, we're running 21 shrines, and it's, 8 wisdom shrines. I thought there was 7 in the stack. Whatever, anyway. So, 8 wisdom shrines, 13 corruption shrines. 13 corruption is enough, you only need 1, and wisdom shrines, like, you need 2, which is why I guess I've got 8 in this deck. So, yeah, 21 shrines. If you want to run 20, which I would not recommend because you need to go up to 3 aspects regularly on turn 6, then I would cut a 1 wisdom since you really need those 13 corruption shrines. But anyway, so we're going to see if we can find a game in friendlies and show this deck off a little bit. So, we're against SWAT Blues, Kayano. Now, this hand looks very good because I've got Legionnaire into double Mesmerizing Spirit going second, so I'm going to keep this. Kayano is not a hero I've seen in a while, to be honest. It's pretty uncommon. This looks to be a either blue... This could just be a blue start, but... I could go Legionnaire twice here. I think that... This is actually a difficult play. So, I actually think that saving the Legionnaire is better here, because next turn I want to go, let's see, I could go Spirit into Flesh Sculptor into Spirit Legionnaire, and that might be better. This could be Reanimator, in which case I wanted to get a more aggressive opening, so getting that 4 attack down on turn 1 is better. Alright, there's New Horizons. Okay, now that I drew the second Flesh Sculptor, it's actually just better for me to go double Flesh Sculptor. Double Flesh Sculptor is an absolutely hilariously insane thing. I've got 3 or 4 Flesh Sculptors out before, and it just gets ridiculous. Every single time something dies, they just multiply. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't hero power. Yeah, he does. Simply because he needs to block, and he's against this color combo, so the extra HP doesn't really help. I'm actually going to go double Legionnaire here. I just want to apply pressure. And then next turn I can play a second Flesh Sculptor. Just meaning I get massive amounts of damage out of everything. I want to keep this Zombie Giant, so I'm going to send back a Spirit. We'll get the blue here. So, if you get the blue, it means that if I top deck a Corruption, I can use that. Whereas if I get the Corruption and top deck a Corruption, I just don't have this blue, and I may need it. Double Library Guards. That is painful. Now, these will multiply, so I'm just going to attack like this. Now, do I move anything back here? I think I'm going to move everything back because I don't want him to pick off anything that isn't like fake at this point. Send back the Survivor. And then I want to go for the Zombie Giant next turn. I think Mesmerizing Spirit's going to be crucial. But what I can do is play the Zombie Giant, which will be very resilient. He's going to hero power here. Sun Chaser? If he hero powers here, that thing will not attack, because I can use the Lightning Storm to clear out pretty much anything. There's a Sun Chaser. Sun Chaser is just not scary here. It just isn't. He didn't attack, which is very smart. Ooh, Vulture. Now, we'll just go for a Zombie Giant and pause. Because next turn, I can Hero Power, attack him, move everything forward, and then just do that again. And if he kills anything, then they just make zombies on the front. Like, if he kills this, I don't lose any damage. I just like gain multiple attacking threats, which is arguably worse because it means he can't jump block it. Airship Explorer, good blocker. He's... Ooh, okay, he's got to reanimate. That's a problem. I can shock this and just attack him though. Alright, so I get him for 6 here. Then next turn... Oh, Jesus, that's ridiculous. I forgot that deck has overwhelming forces in it. And he got a Karthus as well. That was the wrong choice, I think, to attack. How many blockers does he have? 4? Oh. Lenovo having issues. Alright, so he can block 4 things. That would leave him being hit for 10. But then I could play 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. He has 22 damage. It's a lot. This is a difficult play. I think I just have to attack with everything here. Or I could just not attack with anything here. Okay, let's do this. I can't get him low, and I think I have to win with the hero power. I just have to survive long enough to use it again. That overwhelming forces was really brutal. It's like a counter to this deck. There's actually one major counter to this deck, which is a Harpy. Another one? He's gonna mill himself. And Triel. Oh, we can't attack with one of them now. Yeah, I've just lost. Double overwhelming forces. Like, I ran into one of the 2 cards in the game that counter zombies. Like, hard. Overwhelming forces and, what's it called? Bloodwitch Harpy. Harpy counters, like, zombies to a ridiculous extent. Interesting that he's not attacking the fake ones. Yeah, that's what he should be doing. I want to block with the Mesmerizing Spirit. I don't know why he's killing some of the real stuff. That makes no sense. This game's over, though. There's no way I can beat Double Overwhelming Forces playing a Flesh Sculptor deck. That's such a hard counter. It's insane. Oh well. Yeah, now everything has Death Touch. I needed a Necromancer a long time ago. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I'm just dead. Like, if I block with the Ghoul... No, you can tie one of these up, and then he's got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 23, 28. Yeah, there's no way with not dying here. Oh well. Yeah, double overwhelming forces just... that is not a normal game to show in a deck tech, but whatever. So something we did see there is if your opponent doesn't have overwhelming forces, you can actually win pretty fast with this kind of deck. But yeah,
It's very vulnerable to certain cards. Stuff it isn't vulnerable to is board sweepers.
I'd say the only two cards it's super vulnerable to as tech cards are like Overwhelming Forces and Bloodwitch Harpy. Harpy destroys you, but no one's playing Corruption right now, so it's not actually that bad. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. The deck list will be in the description as usual, and if you want to talk to me, I will be either in the Skype group, which is linked in the description, or occasionally on TeamSpeak, which is also in the description. But as for now, this is Jotto, signing off.